All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Pfeiffer, and this is Conversations on Retail. I am here this morning with Ian Haldimann, who is the semi-retired president of technology platforms for Advantage Solutions. Ian, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great. I appreciate you making time to visit this morning. It's a conversation I've looked forward to. You're someone that I've looked up to as an entrepreneur, someone that was able to create something from scratch, build a big business, and attract the attention of a much larger company that would eventually come in and buy. And so I've always respected you, even though I don't really know you. And that's what I'm hoping to kind of achieve during our conversation this morning. Just spend some time, me and then the other folks that would watch this, getting to know you as a human being and understanding kind of what's driven some of the decisions and the things you've accomplished. So I'd love to talk a little bit about, your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and kind of take us through the university experience, how you ended up in Virginia, and just help us understand a little bit about you.
Sure. Grew up in Richmond, really outside of Richmond, kind of rural area, and went to University of Virginia undergrad with no real path in mind, as many college kids, I think, do. Didn't have much of a path. I knew business in some sense, but was an economics major and started that way. But I think, you're talking about entrepreneurial stuff. One of my first entrepreneurial things was a little business we started when I was a kid in the neighborhood. It was called the Filthy Five. And we had my brother and myself and three other kids in the neighborhood, and we drew up flyers and went out and did miscellaneous chores, and that led to a window washing business that then my brother and I had as well. And so I think it was instilled in us early on that work is important and there's value to that, and so we had that kind of work ethic from day one.
Where did those values come from? Did you grow up in an entrepreneurial family, or is it something you just kind of picked up on your own?
I think my parents certainly supported it. We weren't wealthy by any means at all, very, very middle class. And I think they just said, look, if you want something, then earn the money and get it yourself. And so that was the value that they instilled in us. And it served us well and made us think about that, throughout life. You're kind of like, you're on your own, you're going to do it yourself.
Yeah. It's not a conversation about me, but I had a very similar upbringing. The best thing that my parents ever did for me was allowed me to take a paper route at 10 years old. I begged them to let me take over the neighborhood paper route when I was 10 years old, and it created in me this desire to go and earn in order to get the things that I wanted. So yeah, interesting. So went to Virginia and studied. Talk about your background in CPG and what drove that decision to take that first job. Did they recruit you? Did you seek them?
Yeah, actually, I had no background in CPG for many, many years. And so I started Sage Tree when I was 43 years old, Sage Tree, the company that we sold to Advantage. So prior to starting Sage Tree, I worked as a product manager, my first job out of grad school. I went to graduate school at Vanderbilt in marketing, got a job as a product manager for a paint sprayer company called Campbell Hausfeld. Yeah. And then I loved working with engineers to develop product. So product development was a real passion of mine. And eventually through work at there and then also at Coleman Powermate, worked my way up the corporate ladder, traditional corporate life, VP of marketing, VP of sales and marketing, global VP of sales, and started to really think about a business opportunity. And that's when at 43, and it was risky, at 43, when you think about, I look back at that time, I had two kids, young kids, 6, 7 years old. My wife didn't work. We had a mortgage, and to start a company and check out a regular good paying job, it was a difficult step. But looking back on it, obviously it was the right move. But I think for a lot of people, that step is a difficult one to take.
Was it something that nagged at you for a long time? I mean, when I was at Walmart, the whole 12 years I was at Walmart, I had a great time, learned a lot, worked with a lot of incredible leaders. But the whole time I was there, I really felt like, in the words of Steve Jobs, I was living someone else's life and I was meant to be doing something on my own. Did you have a similar experience, or were you perfectly content during those years up until the end, I guess, in corporate life? What drew you to starting a company?
Yeah, I could have been content and was until I started to see a couple of things happen out there. One is we employed a number of sales reps. These are traditional sales reps that would call on Home Depot, Costco, Walmart, whoever. And they were very successful people. They had their own business. We paid them a great deal of money if it was 2 or 3% commission on $100 million worth of generators selling into Home Depot. These guys were making a lot of money. So I saw that model out there and I thought there's got to be a way to do that for the e-commerce space, because at the time, none of my salespeople, direct salespeople, or even the sales reps were interested in managing e-commerce business. And you got to think, back in 2005 and 6, Amazon was not the behemoth that it is today. Right. So they had just moved from books and videos into tools. They bought Tool Crib of the North out of Minneapolis. They got into hard goods. And it was a very difficult business to manage, and it was low sales. If we were doing $100 million on 3 SKUs at Home Depot directly for physical product in the stores, we might be doing $300,000 online. And no one wanted to spend the time to manage $300,000 in sales annually. So those two things combined. So we had sales reps that weren't interested in the business. We had internal people that I couldn't get their time to go after it as well. So I thought there's got to be a solution here. And then I had a person leave that started a online business that became very, very successful very quickly. And today, that business sold for over $100 million a few years ago, and it still is probably an $800 million business today. And that's called Power Equipment Direct. And so John Hoke worked for me. He was the founder of that business. And I saw him leave and start that business. And you could just see the internet was about to take off. Online ordering was going through the roof. And so we said, let's go start this business. It's a service organization. It's a sales rep organization that's focused solely on e-commerce. And let's see if we can build it.
So that was your original vision then for Sage Tree. What did the transition look like out of Powermate? Did you resign one day and start the company the next, or is it more of a gradual shift from day job through a side hustle into the launching of a company and a full-time endeavor?
Yeah, Powermate was going through its own struggles at the time. There was enormous pressure to place inventory at retail. And so Home Depot and Costco and those kinds of larger retailers were pressuring, especially with Hurricane Katrina. If you recall back then, it was a major event. So they were asking Powermate to stage product on our books all over the country. And then we went through a couple of private equity changes, and eventually the writing was on the wall that it was not going to be successful. And it eventually did fold. So I left a couple of years before it did. It wasn't an easy transition at all, I think, especially in the first couple of years working from home by yourself. I remember trying to call buyers. I'm now doing everything yourself, right? You're calling on buyers directly. And at Amazon back then, you could call a buyer. I still remember the main number. It's 206-266-1000. That's the phone number for Advantage's front desk. And I could call and ask for a buyer, and they put you through. Of course, that ended a long time ago. But you're trying to make sales yourself and contact buyers and sitting at your desk every day. And I would carry the phone with me 24/7 in case a 206 number came in. I knew a buyer was calling me back. So it was challenging.
Yeah. What did some of those first customer relationships look like in terms of, you have to name them by name, but the first companies you did business with, and what did Sage Tree do for them, and approximately what did it pay? And I guess what I'm getting at is, how long did it take you to determine that it was going to work?
Sure. Early on, we were after any client, as you do when you're starting a business. You're really trying to get any client. And so one client was a Chinese company that made one tool. It was a wrench that was fairly innovative, had a patent on it. And I thought, this could be great. So, tried to call on Ace Hardware and Home Depot to try to get this wrench placed. Never worked out. And we were working on 5% commission. So if you did make a sale, you've got to sell $100,000 of the product annually to make $5,000. Yeah. It takes a while to build that business. But I remember early on, another one was a folding cardboard liner that went inside a lawn bag. And I thought, that's great. And you do see them out there today, but those were products that were early on that were very difficult for us to get placed. And you just chip away at the block. It is a huge block, and every day you chip. And I remember taking a few days off after a year into it, and a sale was made while I was off, and we made $1,000 commission. And I was so happy to get $1,000 in commission on a day when I wasn't working. It was fantastic.
So it was a grind, is what you're saying, though, for a while before you recognize that this is something that's going to be worthwhile. It wasn't immediately successful, right?
Not at all. I mean, 2 years really. I had a partner
Yeah.
in the business who co-founded the business with me. He left his other company, and so it was just the two of us really for a couple of years. And I remember telling my wife late in year 2, if we can't get to a certain income level, and it was low, just to really pay the mortgage, we've got to throw in the towel. And that 2-year mark was kind of the mark where it looked like things were going to turn. But for 2 solid years, we funded all of our own expenses. So the business is totally self-funded. We never took outside capital. And you're just watching your savings drain every day and that you're in here, but you're believing in yourself. And so the work is, you've never worked so hard in your life. You're on the edge. You're on, it's a lot of tension in the household. And eventually what was interesting is Rob, my partner, his wife became our bookkeeper, did the finance stuff. And then my wife became our HR person. And so it was 4 of us, 2 couples running this business for the 9 years. And they started part-time and quickly went full-time.
Yeah. What were some of the early learnings in those first years? The things that maybe not looking back that you would have done differently, but the things that were really tremendously impactful in the way that you would continue to iterate on the business. What were some of the early learnings?
We were very organized from an HR perspective, and I think that was a big benefit to us. I'm involved now in a startup in live streaming, and the HR side of that is so valuable and so important. In fact, I pulled our old Sage Tree HR manual to take a look at it, and it's still relevant today. So having yourself organized in terms of the people side, because it is, in our case, it's a people business. So much of what startups are today are platform or software oriented businesses, but they're still people oriented. You've got to have great folks that are working for you that stay with you. In fact, next week, we're going to celebrate somebody's retirement as well. And we're going to join together with people that have been with us now for 12, 13, 14 years. And that's, it's fantastic to see that longevity.
Yeah. Talk about some of the iteration over the years, how the business started, and what were some of the first changes that you made as you recognized kind of a changing retail landscape? Kind of give us kind of the history of, if you will, of Sage Tree.
Yeah, we started just offering basic services. We'd set your SKUs up. We'd work with you to develop a strategy. Early on, we were selling to, at one point, over 300 e-tailers. And eventually we decided it wasn't cost effective for us to do that. Amazon was the behemoth out there, or a Wayfair or a Costco or Walmart. But when you started to get past 5 or 10 of the top e-tailers, then the return just dropped off dramatically. But you had clients saying, we have to sell all these e-tailers. They're clamoring for our product. We'd set them up and then find out a year later that they do $8,000 in sales annually. And it just wasn't worthwhile. So that was one of the learnings that took us a few years, really, to start to cull down and say, you know what, we're only going to work with the top 20 e-tailers. It just doesn't make sense for us to spend the time to set up all these SKUs, because it's not only the setup time that takes so much effort, but it's the maintenance. It's constant maintenance. You're tapping into portals for each of those e-tailers. You're spending the time to augment that content, to enhance the content, and very, very time consuming. So that was one learning. Another one was that we had salespeople doing content development early on, because we were a small team. So everyone has to wear many hats. And we quickly realized that a salesperson's skill is not necessarily writing content. They don't enjoy that, right? They're not good at it, perhaps. Their skill should be in front of the customer. And so we started to hire journalism majors, folks who really love to sit behind a computer screen and, and write. And we found that they were happy, and it took that job off the sale. So we started to stratify the jobs so that we have expertise within each of the categories. So those were a couple of things. We started to climb the ladder with clients as well. One of our early clients was First Alert. They were a sister company to Coleman Powermate. And we went to the CEO of First Alert and asked for their e-commerce business. And at the time, he said, well, we're doing like $60,000 a year at 5% commission. How are you going to pay yourselves? $3,000 is not enough. We said, well, give it to us and let's see what we can do. And over, I think, about a 7-year run, we took them to about $30 million, close to $30 million in e-commerce sales. Slowly, of course, our 5% commission got ratcheted down as volume grew, but still, it became a very, very strong account for us. And we learned on the job on how to do this, because you couldn't hire anyone at the time in 2007 that had e-commerce experience. It was very difficult. So we did all of our hires basically internally trained. And even today, the market is crazy for jobs right now. It's really difficult to find good people. And when you do, you have to pay a lot, which, is fair. But at the same time, I think the internal training is overlooked. And so I wish more companies would spend time hiring right out of college and train directly on the job. I think it's valuable.
Yeah. Did you find that it was a lot easier in the early days, as Amazon was layering on just tremendous growth, and there were so many other online marketplaces emerging? Was a lot easier in those days just to put items up and watch them fly? And did the fine tuning, the optimization work become more and more important as time went by? Was that your experience?
That's very true. Yeah, a couple of things happened. So one, the client got more educated. So early on, we spent a lot of time educating the client. And so their bar for service and performance was relatively low. They really wanted their products to be up. So that was number one. Let's just get our products up. Then it was about content development. Okay, now the products are up. Let's make sure all the content's there and it's enhanced. Now that is so table stakes, right? It's so par for the course. That's the beginning of it all. But now it's so much about paid media. And so if you're not doing the spend right, if you're not managing the advertising side of it correctly, then you're not going to be effective. But early on, it was about exposure. So slowly over time, clients got more and more educated. So that was one thing that happened. But you're right, Amazon continued to put more hurdles in front of us that we had to jump over or go through. That became more and more difficult. So our education level increased as well. Our staff had to get better and better at what they did. And so hence retaining people is super important. We had to have people that stuck around, and it's very difficult in the space because it's a hot space and it has been for years. And if you get 2 years of experience in e-commerce, all of a sudden you have a golden ticket.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my next question. Is it's looked like for the last many years, like a gold rush, so many people getting into your business. And I know so many people that are working, on their own from home, just managing, e-commerce business for brands that they're partnered with, or brands that they developed themselves. And I'm wondering how Sage Tree continued to differentiate itself when there was so much competition coming on that, was it a challenge? Not only in terms of new customer acquisition, business acquisition, but the retention of talent, as you just mentioned.
Well, part of it was developing a culture. We were a work from home from day one. And so that was kind of rare at the time, 2006 or 7, to have a work from home business. It attracted a certain type of person, and it wasn't for everybody. And I remember hiring people, and they realized after 3 months sitting behind their own desk, they missed the social interaction of an office. And so they resigned. So we started to do a better job screening people to help them understand what it's like to work from home. But once you found the right person, they absolutely loved it. And we were very family oriented. So Rob and I, we lived the culture ourselves, meaning that we had small kids that, hey, if there's a soccer game at 2 p.m, you take off. You just do that. You schedule your day around that so you can be there for your kids. We had both traveled extensively in our corporate careers. And one of the reasons for starting the company was we wanted a normal family life. I was missing my kids growing up as they traveled all over the world, and it was gone way too much. And so we both said, we'd take a huge cut in pay just to be able to start a business and work from home and be there for your kids every day. And so those values translated throughout the entire company. And we became and still are a very family-oriented company. And so even when we sold the company to Advantage, we tried to continue that culture. And today it does live on in the same mindset of family orientation.
Well, and you're kind of jumping ahead to my next question. At what point did you begin thinking about an exit? Were you thinking about taking on investment capital? Were you looking for a strategic partner like Advantage to come in and just take the business over? At what point from the start did you begin thinking that you were going to need someone in some way to get involved from the outside?
Yeah, we weren't actually interested in exiting at all, but we had a partnership with a pretty good sized company. And they approached us one time and said, hey, would you guys be interested in selling? And it got us thinking about it. And that deal didn't go through, but the door was now open to the thought of, hey, should we think about this and take some money off the table, secure our future, but also provide a runway? The main impetus was to provide a runway for our employees. And when you think about it at the time, there's just so much white space out there. There was a bunch of small companies starting to pop up, doing similar things as us. And, a few other agencies sold around that time. And we started to see the valuations and we thought, well, let's see what we can do. And so we ran a process, right? We hired a banker out of New York and they started to look at the types of companies that would be interested in acquiring us. And I had never heard of Advantage Solutions at all. They actually put together a list of over 200 companies, sent letters out to all those, narrowed down the list, et cetera. We were talking to companies in other countries who were interested in e-commerce in the US. They had maybe an e-com play in India, but they didn't have a presence in the US. So we were talking to digital marketing agencies, all kinds of interesting companies. And the two companies that rose to the top were Advantage and Acosta. And Acosta, if you don't know, is a competitor to Advantage, very large national rep agency. At the time, they were much stronger than they are today. But those two came to the party, and we really enjoyed Advantage because we saw eye to eye with where the market was going and where we wanted to go as a business. And so we struck a deal. It worked out great. We retained our employees. One of our employees is now president of Sage Tree, which is fantastic. So he's been with the company for many years, 13, 14 years. And it's fun to see these employees grow and expand into other agencies too. Some have moved laterally to other agencies within Advantage. And what's nice at Advantage is we're this enormous company that has 60,000 employees. It's essentially a portfolio business. It's a collection of a number of agencies, probably 20 or 30 agencies. I think we've acquired about 100 companies in the last 10 years. And that's partly how we've grown. So what's nice is when you're working with a client, if they have a need and if Sage Tree can't satisfy that need, then just about anybody else can, which is nice. We have all of these other agencies that can provide other services.
I wouldn't ask you, obviously, and nor would you share dollars and cents of the transaction, but I'd love to hear more about what due diligence looked like. Some of your first conversations as you reached out about the potential of a partnership or an acquisition. Take us through from the list of 200 companies down to signing papers with Advantage. What did that look like? I think there's a lot of other entrepreneurs and business owners who would be very curious what your exit looked like, how long it took, and some of the pains and maybe even frustrations along the way.
Sure. And I can also share with you kind of that process as well, because I work in M&A now for Advantage, as I mentioned, part-time. So I still look for companies that make sense for Advantage to acquire in and around this space. And I work on that, regularly. So the process that we ran, and it's different for everybody, is we sent these letters out, or our company, the investment bankers sent the letters out to 200 companies. Are you interested? Here's a one-pager and who they are. You get responses back, and then you get asked to sign an NDA. And then maybe a 5-page packet comes then with some more information, more detailed information. And then they qualify these companies. Are they proper in terms of, are they proper suitors? And then we get brought into the mix. So it goes from 200 to 100 to 50 to 25 pretty quickly. You start cutting these things in half pretty quickly. And then you get down to management presentations. And that's when you get down to a handful. Are there 5, 6, 7, 8 companies that you want to spend the time to do a 2-hour management presentation, where we got on and we spend the time to go over everything about the company and answer questions. And at that point, you've perhaps put in place an LOI, a letter of interest, where they say, hey, here's what we think the company's valued, here's why we're interested. And then we've got the right to choose, who we want to move forward with in the process. And so that's kind of how it works with most acquisitions. It doesn't necessarily have to be a big process like that. It could be, I reach out to somebody. I did just this morning, reach out to a company that I'm interested in talking to about an acquisition. And maybe they're not for sale. Maybe they are. Maybe they won't run a process like that. And maybe we'll just talk to them and make a deal and work it out. So it can be a variety of different things. But basically, you're sharing some confidential information up front with the intent of understanding both sides, understanding the business better. And then you're looking for people fit. It has to be a cultural fit. It's really important to us, at least. It wasn't about money or somebody writing a check necessarily. It was about a culture fit because we were going to stay on, and we both did stay on for 5 years with Advantage and still maintain a relationship, obviously. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. What was that transition like from entrepreneur with almost no accountability to being a part of a much larger organization that's invested a tremendous amount of money in your business and waking up with that accountability?
Yeah, it was interesting. There's so many facets of that. Working for a company that's 100 people versus 60,000 people. In many ways, Advantage allows you to do your own thing, which is nice. They don't want to run the business for you. They want the success that you had in your business to continue forward. And so with Advantage, it was a fantastic relationship. They said, basically, what can we do to help you grow? And on a regular basis, they would say, how can we help you grow? And hey, here's an opportunity. If this makes sense for you, great, do it. And if it doesn't make sense for you, that's okay. You can say no. So we were inundated a bit early on, but part of it was our own doing. We got on a plane and flew around the country to meet with Advantage sales offices all over the country to educate them on who we were and what we could do. And then they became our best advocates. They'd go to their customers they had long relationships with customers, and they were big customers. I remember first week after the sale, I got a call from somebody who said, hey, I heard we bought an e-commerce agency and I'd like you to meet with my clients. It's Newman's Own. And it was like, great. And why don't you fly to Connecticut and I'll set up a meeting. So I flew up there, and he had in the boardroom the CEO and all the executives from Newman's Own. And we had a great meeting. We didn't get the business, which was fine because they said we didn't have any CPG experience. And to back up a little bit, we grew up in hard goods. So generators, air compressors, pressure washers, smoke detectors, knives, tools, hand tools.
Yeah,
we grew up in that space. Yeah, durable goods. And then we got into baby products, mainly because we had employees that were interested. They were young mothers, and they're like, hey, I'd like a free sample of a stroller. And we said, great, call a stroller company and see if you can get them as a client. And they did. And next thing you know, we had a robust baby business. And then we got into toys. So we were in these kind of hard products, hard goods for years. We never did CPG. And that was the attraction of Advantage to us, right? So Advantage needed e-commerce expertise. They didn't have it. We had the expertise, but not in their categories. So it was a nice fit in that we weren't doing CPG. So fast forward a few years later, 50% of our business was CPG. And so we had quadrupled the size of the company in the first couple of years once Advantage had acquired us. And mostly that was CPG growth.
Yeah. How long did you maintain the CEO role before you transitioned into the role that you're in now?
I think 2 years. And then at the end of 2 years, we were asked to manage some other portfolio companies. So Rob, my business partner, did e-commerce services. So he kept Sage Tree and then worked on Beekeeper and Quiver and Quantum and other businesses we had. And then I worked on the Data Council and then a startup called Canopy and eventually Brain Connection. So a few other portfolio companies, and that needed help perhaps, or they needed e-commerce expertise, or they had a leader that left, a variety of reasons why.
So with your responsibilities in M&A today, scanning the market, what are the kinds of companies that are the most interesting to you and to Advantage? What are you looking at?
Companies that are well-run technology platform companies, primarily. Paid social media is an interesting space. Retail media networks is an interesting space as well. These are areas that we play in today, but perhaps we'd like to be stronger. So we're looking for those types of companies that would make sense for us.
Yeah. And how has the world changed the most? I mean, everyone has a perspective based on COVID and the acceleration that's taken place in e-commerce and changing, shopping habits and so forth. But how do you, from your office, what do you perceive as some of the most profound changes that maybe we've not even realized the impact fully?
Well, it's hard to say what. I think in general, people have realized the impact. The impact is dramatic. I'd say first on the employee side, it's been very, very challenging. I served on the culture crew with Advantage for a year or so. And, culturally, the change from work at an office to work from home for a large company was challenging and is challenging. Keeping people motivated and connected. And that's a different skill set. And so we had to think about that and work with managers to figure out how they communicate. Now you're basing your management style on performance, where perhaps it wasn't that before. If the office was full in the morning, you were happy and everyone's at work. Well, now it doesn't matter really how many hours they put in. It's about what they do and the performance. And so we had to change your mindset there. So I think that the HR side of it has been underestimated, the impact and the time needed to re-identify a culture and to redefine how you speak to your employees, communicate with your employees from the top down. It's super important. The level of communication, the quantity of communication, the style of communication, all had to change and has to change to be effective and to have that person who's sitting at home feel connected to the company.
In terms of e-commerce specifically, and I'm going to say something that maybe from your experience is quite ignorant, and I hope that you'll correct me. It seems like in the earlier days of e-commerce, of Amazon, some of these other marketplaces, they were very friendly to small, even mom and pop sellers. And as the marketplaces become more established, it seems like the pendulum, swung the other way, and there was more of a bias toward bigger brands. And now, as all of the retailers are experiencing, all the sellers are experiencing shortages due to supply chain, issues, maybe the pendulum is swinging back again, not in favor of, but to be more balanced for those smaller sellers and unknown brands. Is that correct? And what's your perspective on the appeal of e-commerce again to some of these smaller sellers?
And when we started with it with Amazon, marketplace really wasn't significant at all. I mean, maybe a few percentage points of total sales, and now I'm not sure the numbers. It's 55%, perhaps 60%. It's well over 50%. So that is a seismic shift when you think about it. That's very large. Everything was seller direct at the time, and then it shifted dramatically. And I agree with you that I think Amazon did support the small seller. We could actually talk to a buyer, but over the years, it's so funny. We'd watch these buyers early on. They would walk a show, like, the hardware show, whatever national show, and they'd have their badges out and they couldn't get the time of day. They'd walk into a booth and nobody wanted to talk to them. Amazon, I don't want to deal with e-commerce. And fast forward a few years later, they had to hide their badges. They could not, they would literally be mobbed in the aisles. And so that shift of them trying to get onboarded, get clients onboarding, to then being the gorilla in the marketplace where everybody wanted to be, changed their mindset. Now they wouldn't talk to you. Early on, it was, if you're doing you have to do $1 million in business to get a meeting with the buyer. If you're doing less than that, you're really not going to meet with the buyer. And that threshold continued to go up and up. And then it was 5 million, then it was 10 million. Today, I'm not sure what it is, but well north of $10 million, probably 20, 30, $50 million annually. So they're dealing with bigger and bigger players. And that's part of the push that Amazon put in place to say our vendor managers are valuable. They don't need to be spending time with small players out there and wasting their time. They need to really focus on the big guys. And they have, and they've made it more of an automated platform, much more so today than it ever has been.
There's been so much consolidation. I had a conversation last week with someone who said 425,000 individual retail stores were shuttered and didn't come back as a result of COVID. So we're seeing consolidation not only in retail, certainly with brands. Who do you think is positioned the best going forward? And maybe not naming names, but I think a lot of us at early on with COVID got all excited about online grocery, pickup and home delivery. But, and I'm sample size of one, but a lot of the folks I interact with, we missed our store. And we have kind of gone back, many of us, to life as it was. Do you feel like some of the changes that took place as a result of kind of the short-term pain of COVID, how much of that do you think is going to stick? And how much do you think there's going to be a tendency for us to kind of go back to our store and life as it was?
I think if you're older, you'll go back to your store. I think if you were under 40, perhaps, you've changed your style permanently. I don't think there's any going back. So it's a combination, it's a blend, like so many things are. But I think traditionally, if you're an older person, you'd go back to the store. I'm pretty close to grocery e-commerce. I've been watching the space for some time. Very familiar with all the players. And it's here to stay. There's no doubt about it. And you're seeing, Amazon launch more retail locations like that. The grab and go concept is proliferating. So the technology continues to expand in these spaces as well. I think it's here to stay. And so to the extent how much, it's hard to say. The pundits out there talk about 20% of grocery will be, 25% will be done online. And it was accelerated by COVID by a couple of years easily. So I believe those numbers. I certainly can see it in the space. You're seeing players pop up. You're seeing big companies get into the space that have a vested interest. There are a number of those that play in POS systems today, for example, that have decided, let's jump into the space because we're already at point of sale with a retailer. We're driving those systems as back-end systems today. So it's here to stay.
It's interesting to hear you say that. When I went to Japan with Walmart in 2003, 2004, to help with the integration of the Seiyu business, the research we did with younger families, 30-year-old families, they thought of Seiyu as dark and dirty stores where their parents shop. And I wonder to what extent that same effect will be seen, here in the States. I know Walmart's spending a lot of money to update their stores and add more and more services, but I wonder to what extent it does become a generational thing, and at what point does it create an existential threat for a company even as big and as established as Walmart, as those younger folks continue to make up and the generations that follow become more and more and more of the business.
Yeah, I have kids that are 23 and 22 now, and everything they do is online, of course. But I also live right now in a rural area in Southwest Michigan and shop at the local Meijer and the local Walmart. And, there are customers that will always go into those stores, I think, always. I'm not sure, because of the geographic dispersion here, you're going to have online grocery delivery be a big play here at all. And so many parts of the country are like that. If you think the center of the country now, anywhere in the metro areas, I think that's going to go more and more and more online. But when you get farther out like this, when there are miles between stores, I don't know that delivery is really going to take hold like it will in the cities.
Yeah. So to say that you're semi-retired means that you're semi something else. You mentioned earlier in the conversation that you're doing some work with another company. Talk a little bit about you from a personal standpoint. What are the things that you're working on today, inside and outside of your part-time job with Advantage?
Sure. The nice thing about semi-retirement is you're able to do the things you want to do, which is nice. So I don't have the full-time role anymore with Advantage at my choosing, but I'm able to work on things that I like. And M&A was one area I really enjoyed. And so I continue to work on that for Advantage. And then I love working with founders of businesses. I feel their pain, and I also get energized by that drive. And so I work with a couple right now. One is a live streaming business that we're in a seed round right now. It's a platform. And live streaming, if you're not familiar with it, is live commerce. It is a very large business in China. and it's not in the US. It's maybe a $5 billion business in the US. And so there are a few platforms out there. But I think as time goes on, many of us will be purchasing things live on live streaming apps.
And forgive my ignorance. Would it be more of a high tech, personalized version of a QVC?
It is similar. Yeah, it combines QVC and social media in one. So it's an app-based product. You might be going on to look for shoes, and so you go onto the app, and maybe there's 7 live shows right now. Excuse me, on shoes, and you can tap in and watch one, or it's a recorded show from 2 hours ago, and you're able to make comments if it's live. The moderator can see the comments and respond. So kind of like QVC when people call in and they talk to the person. Well, now you can do it via the app, and then you can transact via the app as well. So it's all on the app, and so it becomes part entertainment, part social media, and shopping all in one. And now you can shop with friends as well. So I could ping my friends and say, hey, come check out this product. It's pretty cool. It's on sale right now. And so it becomes a very social thing. And then you subscribe to it. So now I see all upcoming shows. They ping me and let me know, hey, there's a show on Wednesday. Come watch. That concept hasn't come to the States in a full way yet, but we think it's got incredible legs. And based on what's happening in China, it will come to the US. So that's one company. Another one I'm involved with is a mapping company that's really interesting. It has the concept of Google Maps, right? So Google Maps maps all roads, which is fantastic. But if you wanted a ski mountain, for example, Google Maps is not where you go. But let's say I want to find my skiing partner who went on a different run and I want to meet him at a restaurant. I'd like turn-by-turn directions on the mountain. And this map company can do this. And not only can they do it for a ski hill, but they can do it for any venue, for example. So it could be a cruise ship. It could be a shopping mall. It could be Disney World. And so their concept is to take detailed, structured mapping via an app to the next level. It picks up where Google Maps leaves off. So that's an interesting startup as well. And we're in a seed round with them.
You've mentioned a couple of times in this conversation the importance of a family. You talked about working from home. You talked about, one of the motivating factors for starting Sage Tree was just to get off the road and not miss out on life. At this stage in your life, during this season of your life, what's important to you as a person?
Time with family for sure. So my wife and I travel pretty extensively to visit friends and family, and that's been great. We just took a 3-week driving trip to the Southeast, and we stopped off at friends' houses and relatives' houses along the way, and that to me is great. And then time outside. I get my energy from being outdoors, and when you're working every day behind a computer, it's tough to do that. I've been really fortunate to work from home for the last 15 years. Not everybody can do that, and that's been fantastic. So I can move around a bit. But at this stage of my life, I'm 58. Time outside is super important. So I hunt and fish and ski, and I have a farm, and spend time outdoors as much as I can.
Yeah. Well, at 58, you're still very, very young. Do you think you've got another startup in you beyond the work that you're doing with other entrepreneurs and participating in some of these new ventures? Do you think you have got another startup in you?
No, because of the time necessary to get that thing going. I know what it will do to me physically. I know my wife would kill me. So no, that's not happening. So I get my thrill out of helping someone else do their startup, and they can work their 15-hour days, and I can advise along the way and help. But yeah, I'm done with those kinds of days. I love it, and certainly have energy for it, but I think I'd rather do some other things right now.
Yeah. And looking back over your life and your career, how would you want to be remembered?
Really supportive. It's funny, my wife threw me a retirement party, and it was just so fantastic. My kids put together a book, and they reached out to all of the my colleagues, not all, but a bunch of colleagues and relatives, and those people sent in pictures and wrote stuff. And this book, I was reading it at the retirement party. I was in tears. It was amazing. It was like this is your life kind of thing. Very emotional, but it was fun to see the lives that you've impacted by starting a company, the families that you've impacted over time. That was amazing to see. And so I'd like to be remembered for the energy I bring to the party, to the business relationship, whatever it is, helping other people, succeed and fulfill their dreams. That's important to me. And then helping young people as well. Over the years, I've mentored a number of young folks who've started businesses or started careers, and I really enjoy that aspect as well.
Yeah. I don't get the sense that you're a person that has very many regrets. Everything you've shared has been, very positive and optimistic. And, but with that, the entrepreneurial journey brings with it some way ups and some way downs. My question to you though is, on the whole, has it been fun?
Oh my gosh, it's been incredible. It gives me chills to think about it. So yes, absolutely an incredible ride. I would encourage people to do it in some way, some form or fashion, even if it's on the side, but build something yourself. It is truly an incredible journey. You'll learn so much along the way as well. Even if you fail, you're going to learn. So I'm encouraging my kids to do that. Think about ways to start a business on the side. And I just think it opens your eyes to being on the other side of the desk. Working for a company is fantastic as well. I've loved all my years at Powermate and Advantage and other companies I've worked for, and learned a lot as well there. But I don't know. I wouldn't encourage one way or the other necessarily, because everyone's different. They all have their own journey they have to find for themselves. But I've certainly enjoyed the entrepreneurial side.
Yeah. Well, Ian Haldimann, co-founder of SageTree, semi-retired president of technology platforms for Advantage, father and husband. It has been so much fun finally getting to know you after kind of watching your career and your entrepreneurial journey from afar. I've learned so much, and again, can't thank you enough for the time that you've invested in this conversation today. And I wish you and your family and your team's continued success along your journey. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Take care. Have a great day.
Have a great day. So long.